Whitley Strieber, and you're listening to My Alien Life.
And all of a sudden, everything turns that real foggy white light, and everything turns white, and then this what appeared like almost like a robot was in front of me. And I said, you wouldn't believe what I went through to get here. And I said, you wouldn't believe what I went through to get here. And then I started looking at it, and I got scared. And everything fades out that white again. And that was basically my first. It's a square black craft is what it is. Just a cube with a door in it. And there's other people filing out behind me, like 4 or 5. I look down the valley into this desert, and there's 2 more down the hill with people coming out of those. And I look up over the horizon, across the valley, there's like a rocky ridge. And I see 2 disc UFOs in the sky there. And trust me, I know how bizarre this sounds, but this is how it happened.
My Alien Life is recorded high atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is heard all over the world, and you can listen everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you'll find links to every episode, stories, photos, and much more. I'm your host, Cam Logan. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, 2.
Tonight we tell a story that has never been heard by an audience. Pete Peters is an abductee who is Met is Hybrid's son. Be sure to follow the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, like, subscribe, or favorite, please. That and more is coming right up on My Alien Life.
My name is Pete, and this is from an experience I had in 1997 when I was going through some abductions and hybridization stuff. At one point, I was asked if I'd like to meet my son. And of course I said yes. And so this 8-foot praying mantis steps out about 20 feet away from me, and it's wearing a brown robe. And it's holding in its arms what I believe to be is my son. And it's standing next to like this tree. Either it's a tree or there's these wires coming out of the ground or floor branching out into the ceiling. And whatever. Anyway, it holds its arms out to one of these branches. And I see this little blur of speed run through the branches and dive out the other side towards me. Kind of look like a monkey when you see a monkey running through a tree and jumping off, but it was much, much faster, just a blur. And it's flying over my head, and I didn't think I was going to catch it. This poor little guy's going to hit the floor, so I turn around and kind of barely catch it like a football. And I said, I didn't think I was going to catch you. And telepathically it says back, I didn't think I was going to catch you. And I looked down, and it's on the outside of my arms. Its little suction cup fingers are holding onto my hands and fingers, and its little feet are gripping the outside of my forearms. It's on the outside of my arms. It caught me, I didn't catch it. And I look into its face, and it's not a typical gray. It's got real dark, kind of bluish skin, a real wide mouth. and kind of slanted, big black eyes, but they were like more narrow. And then it smiled at me. I could see the corners of the mouth curl up, the kind of wrinkly skin move, and its eyes narrowed a little bit when it smiled. And I think that's when the fear started to kick in a little bit, because everything turns that real foggy white light that whenever I get scared, it's like everything turns white and kind of fades out. Next thing I know, I'm being laid back into my bed, and there's a sound next to the bed, right next to me, going wom, 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 wom. And I reach over and I grab my wife by the shoulder and I kind of roll her over. And I'm all, do you hear that? What is that? And she's got her hands pressed against her face real hard. And she's just saying over and over again, don't look at it and it'll go away. Don't look at it and it'll go away. Don't look at it and it'll go away. And I let go of her. She rolls right back onto her face again. And that sound starts to move down around the foot of the bed. It's wom, wom, wom. And it's the kind of sound you can feel more than hear. It's hard to explain, but so it moves around the foot of the bed, out the door, into the bathroom, through the wall, and kind of fades away and upwards. So the next day I wake up, I don't remember nothing. I go to work, everything's fine. And it was later after work, we were driving through town. I remember we were driving through this real busy intersection at rush hour. And that's when she says, "That was a weird noise in our room last night." And as soon as she says it, it slams into my head, man. And I locked up the brakes and we skid into this gas station parking lot. And I just sit there and shake and cry for like 20 minutes. And I just keep repeating, they took me. So all these memories came back. More than just what I just said now. There's more to the story, but yeah. So about 2 months later, we're at the hospital because she just gave birth to my son. And the nurse wraps my son up and hands him to me. And I look down and he looks right into my eyes and smiles at me. And I just lost it. I mean, even the nurse, she's standing there, she's like, "Wow, I've never seen a baby do that before." And so, yeah, that happened. I mean, what do you even do with information like that? When stuff like that happens to you, what do you do with it? You just live with it.
Wow. Pete Peters, thank you so much.
Thanks, Cam.
So you dropped that bomb on me. I asked for people to submit stories, and you sent me this story, and I was a bit blown away. And I'm sure that people who just listened to that clip will be blown away as well, because they may find a lot of common ground, or it's just scary at times. So let's not get into that right now. I just want to hear a little bit about you and your background. Let's start at the beginning. Where are you from? And tell everybody a bit about yourself, because you're brand new to the podcast, and people have never heard you before.
Okay. Well, I'm Pete. Not my name. I'm living in New Mexico now, and yeah, I've had an interesting life. Let me tell you, I'm 49 years old, almost 50. So, yeah, I've had plenty of time to have some experiences, that's for sure.
So were you originally from New Mexico, or where did you grow up?
I grew up in Santa Cruz, California, in the Redwoods.
Right.
Yeah, and even as a kid, yeah, I'd just go disappear into the Redwoods like little kids aren't supposed to do, and just wander.
So talk about that, because that's kind of like my childhood as well, except mine, I didn't have a lot of trees around me, but yeah, I would tend to disappear, and that seemed to be okay. Nobody ever came looking for me. I mean, I grew up in a really safe environment, a safe place, far and away from a lot of people, but growing up and wandering out in the Redwoods like that, where you could completely disappear. What was that like, and what made you wonder?
I don't know. I've been that way my whole life. I've kind of just ventured off, and go places you're not supposed to go. You kind of know I shouldn't be out here doing this. Um, yeah, that's kind of where a lot of it started. I mean, a lot of my experiences, I have all the warning signs are there from childhood. The disappearing from the house at 2 years old and being found an hour later down the street. I think I remember me and a friend of mine actually in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I think I was about 12 years old. And we were out really late walking those roads out in the mountains. And you're really not supposed to do that. And we were walking down the road, and like all of a sudden on our left, you could see what looked like a 10-foot deer head sticking out over the road. And I mean, total cryptid sighting kind of thing. And we both take off running, run about 20 feet, and I look back and it's gone. And we start walking from there again. Did you see that? Yeah, did you see that? We're freaking out. It's like midnight. We're trying to get back to his house. And off to our right, like down the hill, there's a stream. And you could hear something walking through those breaking branches. And we're on the street, so, we're not making any noise. And the further we walk down the street, the closer those footsteps are getting to us up the road. We end up taking off in terror again and making it to his house. But that's kind of the way my life has been, like that.
So that specific event, how old did you say you were?
About 12.
12.
Yeah. And yeah, that's just how it went for me. And then the lucid dreaming started real early, about 13, 14 to 15. I really, waking up in your dreams and, taking candy or something, not because you're not worried about getting caught, starts like that. And then that turned into, like astral projection and out of body experiences. And then, yeah.
So back up those are, quite a contrast in experiences. So what was after these dreams started, what was your first experience that you remember that was just totally off the radar, something you never expected and blew you away?
Okay. I say when I was 22, I was at a friend's house, and remember we'd stayed up watching movies, and I crashed out on his floor in his living room. And after going to sleep, all of a sudden went up through the ceiling. I just remember going up through the ceiling and up about 100 feet in the air, looking down, and I could see the city lights. And then like shooting off in a direction. And I'm watching as we're like leaving town, I could see less and less lights. And then there was like darkness on the ground and more lights as we entered another town. And then this is like an out of body experience. Then down to street level, up a driveway, through a doorway, down a hallway into a bedroom. And there's this girl I like sitting on the end of the bed. And she's got a cigarette in one hand, and she's flipping through some records on the floor next to a stereo. And I remember I could describe this room to a T, who was in it. And the next day, I tell her, what had happened the night before. I had an out-of-body experience. And she thought I was stalking her, like peeking through a window, and didn't want anything to do with me. About 6 months later, we get together, and she finally admits to me that really happened, and I just, couldn't handle thinking you were peeking through windows. And I assured her I wasn't. Well, we ended up having a one-night stand, and I got her pregnant.
Wow. So,
and the experience felt like somebody grabbing you by the wrist and saying, "Come here, I want to show you something," and so I was kind of taking and showing the person I was going to have a kid with.
And yeah, I heard a similar story from a future wife that I ended up having a kid with something happened to her like that, about me. So
what does it mean? Where does that come from?
maybe with, the hybridization stuff or something. There's a lot of big synchronicities and coincidences with people around, pregnancies and children. And
I mean,
yeah,
at that age though, and obviously you felt that was going to be a good experience, and then kids can be a good experience, but that was unexpected. What did that do for you then?
I moved to Oregon right afterwards, like a couple weeks after this, and I hadn't talked to her. I didn't talk to her for almost 2 years. So I didn't even know I'd gotten her pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I was in Oregon in, was it like 93? That's when I see my first UFO. And the timing, I would guess, is right around the time she was born. So, and that one I was walking to my neighbor's house, and I caught something out of the corner of my eye and looked over, and big, like, white ball of light, about the size of a small car. It's about 40 feet off the ground, and it goes right over my neighbor's house. Like, it's at night, and it lights up his roof as it goes over, and then disappears into the forest behind the house. And I could see it lighting up the trees as it went in. On one side they're dark, on my side, on the other side I could see the bark. It was lighting it up as it went in through the forest. And later that night was my first dream about him. And that was
first dream about them.
Yeah, about being taken.
But you said them. Who are they?
Well, whatever they are.
Yeah.
That time it was what looked like a robot to me. So I hadn't really seen a gray yet or anything. But it was me walking across in that same spot at night. And right at that same spot where I'd seen the UFO. And this time it wasn't there. I was just walking, and it was very dreamlike, And then it's like I stepped into water. And I don't know if you've ever been in the ocean when you're standing and the wave picks you up and sets you back down on the ground. It felt like that, to the point where I thought I'd stepped out into water and I actually was going to turn around and try to swim back. And all of a sudden, everything turns that real foggy white light, and everything turns white. And then this, what appeared like almost like a robot, was in front of me. And I said, you wouldn't believe what I went through to get here. And I said, you wouldn't believe what I went through to get here. And then I started looking at it, and I got scared. And everything fades out that white again. And that was basically my first UFO sighting, and then following dream afterwards.
There's people out there who obviously feel like they're being tracked by something, an entity, an alien, or they have some sort of entity or alien that's guiding them through life, or all of the above. To me, let me put it this way: if you told that to somebody who is totally unfamiliar with what we're talking about, they would think it's crazy, and that it would be a lot of work to track a human, especially covertly. Any idea why you would have this following you, and why you're so important to keep tabs on? I mean, not that I don't think that happens, because I certainly do, but why are there people who are extremely important to some other being that probably isn't from this world?
To me, it's like it's the bloodline thing. I think the family lines. And once they get involved with somebody like that, and they do, it seems like they almost like they manipulate people around you. So you're pretty much having kids with the people they want or something. It's you look back at it, and then I've gotten pretty upset about that over the years. That maybe my life ain't my life kind of thing. But it seems to be always wrapped around that, like the out of body experience where I was showing her that sighting there. I can't pinpoint it because I didn't know then, but I'm pretty sure it was right around the time she was born. And by my experiences later, a few years later, it was very similar, right around those times, and
You ever feel like you might be a product of some otherworldly being?
Very well could be. There's if they've been doing this and it seems like they have for a long time, then yeah. I mean, I don't ever feel like super connected to any one, species or anything like that. I'm a little different. That I've tried really hard not to subscribe to any belief because that led me down paths I didn't like. So I like to say I don't know a lot.
Well, and a lot of this is uncomfortable too. I mean, it's
Mhm.
I often say that this is my way of searching for answers by talking to people like you.
Yeah, there's so many paths to take searching for answers, and you can find like a little bit of your truth in everything. It's but yeah, I definitely have felt tracked my whole life. That's you don't feel like you can really run from it anywhere. It's not.
What about the rest of the family? Anybody ever have any experiences? You ever talk about this to your immediate family? Any brothers or sisters?
Yeah, on my mom's side, it's like everybody in the family, and it's a pretty big family, has seen something in the sky they can't explain. They all say they've seen a UFO, but then none of them really believe it. There's not a single one except for myself that actually believes. And
Well, but they're those who have experienced it. Although there are a lot of people who see things and they don't believe what they just saw either. So I mean,
yeah,
it's really hard to believe. I mean, it's really a remarkable thing that happens, and I think that's one of the reasons too that people question a lot of things. I mean, they question religion, they question our origin, our human origin. They don't subscribe to any particular religion or any school of thought like yourself. However, they do jump from different theories of how we evolved to another, whether it be from God or whether it be from, natural selection. I mean,
yeah,
it's a tough one, or aliens. I mean, it's really hard to put us as humans into an origin story that even makes sense at times.
yeah. My feeling is that it does go way back. That I don't think this is as new as the 50s or 40s or whatever. I think this goes quite a ways back. I think they've been doing this a long time.
So you're in your 20s. You have a child out there somewhere, and you found out about that. And what was the next big event in your life that was remarkable that you didn't expect?
Okay, yeah. So then I moved to Colorado, and I ended up getting married, and started getting a lot of weird synchronicities again around people. Right before I'd gotten my wife pregnant, that were like, there was a band I wanted to play in, so I'd moved to Denver. She gets a job way across Denver. The person she works with just got a roommate that moved out, so we move in with them. Well, it's right across the street from the band I wanted to play with up there. Coincidence, right? Well, this continues on with the roommate's boyfriend's job and who he moved from Kansas was a boss of the guitar players. And none of these people know each other. But it's like everywhere I go, this starts happening. You know a couple of the right people, you know everybody. But it goes like beyond coincidences and synchronicity. So I ended up moving like 200 miles away to this town. And that's when I had the experience we heard earlier. And it was I don't even know how to begin that one.
Well, we kind of heard a bit about
Yeah.
it, but prior to that, was there any experiences that that were similar or totally different? I mean, because it's because that one is very interesting in many different facets, and I'm putting that lightly just because I was a bit stunned when I heard about it, and even now and then I can hear it in your voice. It's not an easy thing to talk about.
No, it was pretty bizarre. It was only a few years between the one I seen in Oregon and that one.
Right.
So it was around 93 and 97 is when the one we heard. And when I said all those memories came back, is kind of where you have to start, is just the memories that came back. Because leading up to it, well, actually it was within a night or two before that happened. I remember laying in bed, and we had like this addition that used to be a patio, awning that was turned into a room. And the previous renters had put mirrored ceiling in. There was a completely mirrored ceiling in this little room. And I was laying there looking up into that mirror, and I see this red dot. It's a little glowing red ball. And it looked like a laser light, like somebody was pointing a laser at the mirror or something. So I like sat up and I looked around. The curtains are drawn. There's no way light can come in. There's not, I looked at the foot of the bed where it was, would have been coming from, about the foot of the bed. And I can't find anywhere where it's coming from. And I start looking at it again, and this red light, it almost looks like it's about a foot behind the mirror or in the mirror. But, there's no crawl space for anything, video camera up there or anything. It's just a patio roof. And it was like I could almost see something behind it. So I sat up and I looked around one more time to see where it was coming from, and didn't see anything, and looked up and it was gone. And I believe that was either the night or the night before. It's hard the way the memories came back, but of the experience we heard earlier, which has a lot more to it.
Prior to the mid-90s, had you ever heard of abduction, alien abduction, or hybridization?
Yeah, I mean, Whitley Strieber's Communion, or listening to old Art Bell. My dad was a truck driver. He turned me on to that. So, yeah, I'd heard of this stuff before, for sure.
Did it strike you as something that you wanted to find out more about, or was it just a story that until the next Art Bell story or show?
It was. I was pretty interested in it until it happened, and then I pretty much didn't want anything to do with it. That was kind of how that went.
And before I want you to go into the details of that story, but before we do that, I just, afterwards and after you've had these experiences, I mean, what did that feel like? Because was there ever a moment where you decided that you needed to figure this out and needed to explore all these avenues to figure out why and how and exactly what happened, and to see if possibly there were other people who have had the same exact experience?
Honestly, I did at first, and within months I didn't like it. I was too afraid. It terrified me. And I wanted it to go away and to stop. And my real search for answers didn't really start till about 2 years ago. I didn't Google nothing. I mean, until about 2 years ago. And I was floored when it was like reading my own story and other people's experiences.
And there's,
I almost forgot for about 15 years. I called them dreams, and I didn't want nothing to do with them. And I finally reached a point where I could go to bed at night not scared. And I should have invested the time back then and gotten over my fear earlier. You know, if I could warn people about anything, it's don't let the fear overtake you. Because, you know, I began drinking so heavily that I'd pass out at night instead of laying in bed scared. And that pretty much ruined my life. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, and it is overwhelming. And you get to a point, I'm sure, where it's exhausting just to be you. And you do kind of just succumb and fall asleep and more like give in to the horror of your own life rather than forget about it. I mean, it's just, I think a lot of people I've talked to become so exhausted, they're just done.
Yeah. And then as time goes on, you realize, you know, they never really hurt me. I mean, I can't speak for other people, but, you know, it seemed like they were trying to get a message across to me or show me something, you know, but it's just face to face with them is terrifying. It's just no way around it. Even, you talk to people that have had constant contact for many years and they'll still say it's really difficult.
And there are those who have had physical contact, which was very, very negative, but I don't want to discount the fact that, you know, even though you had these experiences and weren't harmed physically, ultimately that stress mentally takes its toll and manifests itself physically. I mean, you had to have been a wreck. And like you said, you drank a lot, which really, really multiplies that and makes it even worse.
Yeah, you end up with PTSD and everything else. It's, you know, you're too old to be scared like a 9-year-old that something's under the bed, you know. It's but it's worse than that. It was easier to deal with when you were a kid, you know. Not a grown man to be that afraid.
Right. So let's talk about the event that sort of patterned or put a face to some of the prior experiences that you had. You had said something about here's some abduction and hybridization stuff, and you know, I was like, wow, okay, here we go. And how did that night start? I mean, did you just go to sleep like normal?
Oh yeah, I believe that was same night as that red light.
Okay.
And it's always hard to pin down the days because, like I said, all the memories came back at once. Like, I think this was going on for, you know, a week or a few days in a row or something like that. But they all came back at once. And so, yeah, the only way I can really start that is just how it was. And the first memory I have is walking down a hallway, and it's like really narrow and kind of short. And there's what I think is a couple people behind me. And they lead me, and it's about a 10-foot, 15-foot hallway, and there's a little narrow doorway on the right. It's all really dark. It's like the further in you go, the darker it gets. And then going into like a little square room, about 15 foot by 15 foot, and you can see the shadows of people in there, or beings or whatever. And we got to kind of bumping shoulder to shoulder to fit in there. The people behind me are kind of pushing me in. And there's movement. I can see the shadows in front of me of like the heads and shoulders of movement. And then all of a sudden everybody stops. And it's still. And it sits like that for about 5 minutes, just perfectly still like that. And then we start walking back out that door and down that hallway and outside. And I'm walking out into the desert. It's like, I look back and it's a square black craft is what it is. Just a cube with a door in it. And there's other people filing out behind me, like 4 or 5. I look down the valley of this desert, and there's 2 more down the hill with people coming out of those. And I look up over the horizon across the valley. There's like a rocky ridge. And I see 2 disc UFOs in the sky there. And I'm kind of looking around like, well, what's going on here? And trust me, I know how bizarre this sounds, but this is how it happened. These 2 discs shine a light down behind the ridge across from where I'm at. And it reflects a light back up into the sky. And in that light is the image of a dead elephant lying on its side. And I can see, the trunk and everything, but it's like a neon looking light. It's really hard to describe the color, a bluish, greenish, orangish, but it was really just odd looking. And I remember asking, I was like, what kind of light is that? Because it was so weird looking. And a voice behind me says, it's symbiont. And I'm thinking like ambient, or whatever. Okay. And stand there looking at this, scene in the sky in front of me. And all of a sudden I get this like overpowering fear, that something's wrong. And I look behind me and this red ball or like a red UFO or ball of light is coming towards me from behind. And it's pulsing like a real deep red. And it's pulsing flash, flash, flash like that. And each time it flashes at its brightest, it's dripping off the bottom like static electricity is dripping off of it. And this thing just felt angry. And it scared the living crap. I remember cowering underneath it, passed over the top. And then it flies over and it parks itself above the other 2 discs. And it sits there for a second, and then it flashes its own light down, and that makes the 2 discs disappear and the image of the elephant disappear. And it's just left sitting there by itself, this red ball pulsing. And then it starts moving back towards the same direction it came from, and it passes over me again, and it's, I cower underneath it again. And then it starts picking up speed, disappears over the horizon, and there's a flash behind the horizon. You see like a wall of flame come back towards me, showing me the destruction of Earth or something. It's like a meteor strike almost. Now, I used to tell people it looked like a hologram, like you're actually somewhere, but they're showing an image of a hologram over the top of it. And recently I've been looking at augmented reality. That's exactly what it looked like. Like you're standing in the desert, but they're showing you something. I know it's really weird, but the next thing I know is when they asked me if I'd like to meet my son. And of course we heard that. I don't know if you want me to repeat all that again.
Sure, absolutely. And were you able to see these, whoever they were at that moment, or did you?
No,
okay.
It's coming up. So yeah, they asked me if, and I was full of fear at the time. Remember, I was still scared, and that's when they asked me if I'd like to meet my son. It's that same voice over my left shoulder that asks. And I said, sure. And I'm just thinking, my wife's pregnant. I get to meet my son before he's born. And that's when the scene kind of changes. And all of a sudden there's like a tree in front of me. And like an 8-foot mantis steps out in a brown robe, cradling something in its arms.
Now, when you say mantis, I mean, I certainly have a feeling of what that would look like, but try to describe as best as you can what this thing looks like.
The arms and the face were like the mantis, but the body was like, it was wearing a robe, of course, but it was human form. It didn't have like a long mantis body or nothing. It's just, the face was, it just looked like a praying mantis with the folded arms in front. And that's actually one of the first things I Googled a couple years ago.
But
did you mantis beings and heard a story about a guy being shown, a kid and a mantis in a robe. And
right. So were there legs on the ground, like 4 legs on the ground or 6 legs on the ground and 2 up?
To me, it looked like 2 legs. I mean, the way it was standing, it was wearing a robe all the way to the ground.
Right.
And it was just the body shape looked, human-like. I couldn't see, underneath the robe.
So the robe, was it all the way to the ground? Was it, what was it made out of? I know it was brown, and I'm automatically thinking terry cloth cotton robe, but what did it look like to you?
It looked like one of those like thick monk robes almost to me. But it was standing about 20, 30 feet away. It was standing next to that tree, about 20 feet.
Now, was it a tree?
I've thought about that a lot, and I don't know. It could have been, because I don't remember the branches going, up into the top of a tree, almost like, it stopped about 15 feet up or so.
But you could, Pete, let me just throw this at you. You could have been in some kind of altered state right then. Well, you were in some kind of altered state then. So, what you're perceiving there could be totally different. What did you feel about your state? When you think about that, what was it? I mean, what was happening there with your brain?
It's very, it's weird how like the fear comes and goes. Like 1 minute it's just dreamlike, and then the fear kicks in. It's almost like, I don't know how to explain it. Almost like you're being kept from being afraid. So you're almost kind of feeling safe in a dumb way. I don't know how to explain that. You're like, you should be freaking out, but you're not. Exactly.
And you should be freaking out, but obviously something has happened where you're not, but you're fighting it.
Yeah. And then that fear kicks in every now and then. Sometimes it feels like they do it on purpose. Sometimes it feels like that it usually ends whatever's going on when you get too afraid. I've noticed that.
So there's this tree thing, and
or a cable coming out of the ground and branching out into the ceiling of wherever I'm at. But anyway, it steps forward and puts its arms up to one of the branches, and all I see is like a blur of movement. I mean, real fast going through those branches. Like you can almost kind of see hands and legs, but it's just too quick. And it just flies through there, and it's towards me and jumps out off the branch nearest me towards me. And it's like going over my head. And I had to turn around and catch him, and almost like a football catch, you got to turn around real quick and catch him. And the first thing I said instantly is, I didn't think I was going to catch you. And I looked down, and I was looking at, that face. And it says telepathically to me is, I didn't think I was going to catch you. And I go from the face, those big eyes. The first thing I seen was the eyes. And I looked down at my hands, and he's on the outside of my arms and my hands, holding onto my fingers and my hands, and got his feet or gripping my forearms.
When you say the outside, you're talking about like on the back of your hand and then the back of your arm? So you really
Yeah.
didn't, you weren't catching anything. It was literally sucking to your body.
Yeah. Yeah. It was holding on to me from the outside of my arms.
Suction,
You know,
suction cups,
yeah. There were
for
like,
lack of a better word.
yeah,
I
little
mean,
suction up fingers
yeah.
and toes. And then I looked up into his face again. And that's when I was like frozen. And it was a little, looked like a gray kind of, except much darker, kind of bluish. And the eyes were kind of lidded because his eyes were narrowing as he smiled. His corners of his mouth went up, and I could see he had wrinkles in his face, and they moved with the smile, and the eyes kind of narrowed as it smiled. And that's when I just started getting real scared, and it fades out into that white fog that always seems to happen. And that white fog I've seen, a few times. I always called it like a lit up fog, like walking into a fog, but the fog is the light itself.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I've heard it.
Yeah.
I've heard it called that. And, it doesn't seem like lights.
Yeah.
It's lit, but it's not coming from anywhere in particular.
Yeah. I've heard it called fuzzy light. Yeah. So that happens. Then it fades out into that white. And then I'm being led into a room. And I walk in this room, and I'd say it's about a 30-foot circle, 20 or 30 feet. It's pretty big. What looked like a black marble floor and a black marble ceiling, but the wall all the way around was that foggy white light. And it looked like a cloud. You could almost see it moving, the wall, but it looked like being surrounded by a cloud, except for that ceiling and floor. And I'm standing there for a minute, and next thing I know, it's like I'm up closer to that wall of light, or that light closed in on me. I'm not sure, but I'm like right up next to it, and a big praying mantis sticks its head through that light, kind of pops out, just his head and his forearms out of that white fog. And it looks down on me, and he starts talking to me, but I don't understand what it's saying. It's like it's telling me something. I knew it was something real important, but I couldn't understand it. And I don't know how long that went on. It felt like a really long time. And then the very last thing it said I could understand was, a storm is coming and it won't go away for a long time. And it kind of fades out. And, I've thought about that a lot. And if this is the same experience, these memories that came back with the same experience, earlier it showed me, Earth being destroyed by flames. But now it's telling me a storm is coming. It's like almost contradictory, I've always wondered about that. Or
Yeah. And I'm sure that set your mind spinning. And then,
Yeah.
Wow. I can't get by the alien on your arm and, have this very vivid picture of that. It wasn't repulsive. I mean, this is something that you've never felt before. It had to have been just, your mind had to have been going nuts.
When I was holding him, or when it was holding me, actually, I remember feeling love from him. Big time. I mean, even the smile and everything, it was like he was super happy to see me. But what you're looking at is so terrifying, it's still that fear took over and kind of cut the experience short, I think.
Yeah. Well.
So
then what? What happened next?
So after this, 8-9 foot praying mantis has this long conversation I don't understand with me. everything fades out white again. And okay, this is the one it's hard to talk about. They take me into a room, and there's a naked blonde woman kneeling on her knees, like face down, and I begin to have intercourse with her. And at this point, I don't know, the way it goes. It's like it's just a dream. You know, I've forgotten what's going on, what I'm doing, and I'm doing this. You know, and where she had like super straight, super blonde hair. You know, more than halfway down her back, and I'm doing this. We're having intercourse, and I don't even know how to say it nicely. Let's just say I looked down, and something wasn't right. The hip bones, something just was. I remember, you know, thinking, you know, what's going on? What is this? And I kind of peek around the side, like to see her face, because I wanted to make sure it was, you know, not a guy or something. You know, something was just wrong like that. And she kind of turned her face away where I can't see. And I looked down at, like, you know, if you look down the side of somebody in that position, you could see like their elbow and their arm and their side of their leg. And that didn't look right. It was almost too flat. I don't know how to put it. It's like somebody trying to push herself into the floor, kind of to get away, or was folding up. I don't know. Folding into the floor. Is that a way to put it?
Sure.
And I started getting real scared. But this time it doesn't stop. And I can't stop. And, you know, last thing I want to be doing is this right now. But I'm not stopping, you know what I mean? And, you know, I become terrified, and, you know, you want to scream, but you can't. And then it's over. And I swear it looked like she folded into the floor or something. She was like much too flat. It was, but anyway, I was like, I hope nobody ever finds out about this. I remember saying that, and that voice that's always behind my left shoulder answers, just you, me, and one other, which is more than that now, but yeah, and that's when I woke up in the morning before I went to work, and I didn't remember any of this. I had like a green jelly on me in my groin, on my groin, and it looked like hair gel or something, green with the little bubbles in it. And I was late for work. I remember, what the hell is that? I better ask my wife about that later, you know, and kind of wiped it off, put on my pants, all ass to work. And I didn't think about that until a long time later, actually, when I had heard somebody else's story in the last couple of years. And I remember completely and totally waking up with that morning. But yeah, that's where that ended. And to me, it felt like, I've heard other people say what that is, because I've heard the same thing, that lifting of the illusion and you becoming terrified and can't stop. I've heard that from other people. But to me, it felt like, because I thought it was a dream, is why they lift it and let you see. They want you to know what has happened. And as long as you think it's a dream, you know, or a wet dream or something, that you're not going to remember it.
Okay. And so this is all in one night, right?
Yeah, or it was over a couple nights, but the memory came back all at once,
right,
of all that. So I know there's a lot more that happened, but that's all I remember. So
when you had said that they wanted to show you your son, the alien being hanging off your arm was evidently part of you somehow.
Yeah. That's, you know, I came away with it. I mean, within the first day of that memory coming back, there was something about it that was about souls. I remember coming away. Before that experience, I didn't believe in a soul. I mean, seriously, I'm not religious. I was never went to church. I never, when you die kind of thing. And it was that I came away from that they had showed me something about souls. I can't remember exactly what, but the gist was, that at first I thought that was the soul that they were going to put in the womb of my wife. You know what I mean? And that was pretty goddamn heavy to take, or process. And then I started studying and read a few books after that. I'm like, okay, well, it's just hybridization. They're taking some from me that make children out there, and then they're messing with the DNA down here with our kids. But
no big deal.
Yeah, but there's something real heavy going on with soul transferals. This is that because I live my life like your soul's the most important thing there is now. But
so that changed immediately once you were introduced to the soul, I guess.
Yeah. I've seen one picture that looked really similar to what I held in my arms, or what held me while I thought I was holding it in my arms. And that is those the soul technicians that Whitley Describer described.
Right.
And I seen a picture of one of those, and that was in a robe, matter of fact, but the one I seen wasn't. But it was real similar to that. That real wide mouth, the narrower eyes. But it was when my son was born that, and it's what shut me down for a long time, was like I described before, the nurse had wrapped him after he was, I was in the delivery room the whole time. She wraps him and hands him to me. And it was like deja vu. He looked right in my eyes and smiled, made like a little cooing sound, like coo, like, I was like, hey, buddy. And all of a sudden he looks at me and smiles like that. And even the nurse was almost in tears, freaking out. She's like, I've never seen a baby like do that intensely. I mean, he smiled, his eyes narrowed when he smiled. And it was the same thing, except this time he's inside my arms. You know what I'm saying? Where before he was outside. And it seems like there's some kind of symbolism there, outside the arms before.
Well, big time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what was it? Terror? Was it love? What do you feel at a moment like that?
It was love.
Good.
Yeah. There's it's always been love with my kids. But. And
does that remain in your mind? I mean, I don't know, somebody who experiences something that a trauma like that. I mean, obviously you're going to think about that in certain ways, but it sounds like that you were able to possibly, since you'd been through so much prior and had a good introduction. I mean, here was a nice, warm, normal person, and it was quite a contrast and probably a relief.
It's always something it's like there's a message there I never quite got, that was, but it's not all bad. Okay. Oh, I forgot to tell you a couple, like, not the day after these things happened, but the following day, I was at a friend of mine's house, and I told him, he's a drummer in my band, so I'd tell him all kinds of crap. But I told him about what happened, And he slid a newspaper at me, and I'll read that. He taps an article. And I look down, and it's an article about a circus elephant that died 2 nights before in Albuquerque, New Mexico, that was neglected. And yeah, died of dehydration and heat stroke. And it died that night that I had that experience.
So what do you think is behind is it symbolism? What is it? What's the elephant mean?
Well, when I asked what kind of light is that, and they said symbiont. Back then in 97, we didn't have phones, so I had to find a dictionary and look it up, but it's 2 organisms that live together for the mutual benefit of both.
You bet.
And yeah, it's.
So there's your symbolism.
I've always felt close to animals, but I've had a totally different. Yeah, I don't like killing anything. My wife hates me for putting spiders outside.
Right. Well, I hate leading questions, and I don't even want to ask some of these things because it is leading, but I mean, in a way, it all makes sense. And then again, I don't know if I'm stretching to that conclusion or if you are as well, but I mean, in ways, yeah, it does make sense.
And all I can really go off of is what I seen and how it felt, what I thought it felt like, or what I think they were trying. I can't say they're, they're connected beyond the veil somehow. I don't.
Right.
What I dealt with anyway was definitely felt interdimensional, or how I can. I was telling you the lucid dreaming, the out of body experience, the astral projection. I've had those kind of stuff all my life, but when they're around, it's like you're dealing with something that can meet you on that level, the out of body level. They can meet you there. They can be in the dream. But when they push through to this physical stuff, it turns into something way more powerful. It's way more intense than just meeting an entity, while lucid dreaming or whatever.
Right.
I remember for weeks following that, man, I'd hear that clicking noise at night. I can make the sound with my fingernails like that. And it would just send those, like getting shocked with electricity. And this happened night after night for weeks after that. But it slowly kind of tapered off. And that always seemed important, that it's almost, like I said, like they can meet you on that level, out of body or whatever, or even cause it in you. But when they do the physical with you, the hybridization stuff, they need you physically. It's way more intense, as I can put it.
So then somewhere along the line, you compare notes with your wife. How did that happen? What was that like?
She didn't even remember saying, "Don't look at it and it'll go away." She didn't remember me trying to wake her. She just remembered hearing something. Because, I remember being put back in bed, and there's that noise next to the bed, that whom, whom, whom sound. And I remember looking over, and I grabbed her by her shoulder and kind of to roll her over. And it was like her whole body was stiff as a board. And she didn't want to roll over. She's like pulling against me. And when I pulled her over far enough to see her face, she had both her hands pressed against her face real tight. And she started repeating over and over and over again, "Don't look at it, it'll go away. Don't look at it, it'll go away." And wouldn't stop saying that. So I kind of let her go, and she rolled back over onto her face and got quiet again. And that's when I looked over, and I couldn't see what was making the noise. It was just It was just blackness right there.
So do you feel, you described the noise as starting in the room and then leaving. Do you think, I mean, it was made by something that was in your room that was just finished its duty or did whatever it had to do and was leaving?
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like. Whatever was dropping me back off. Yeah, it was.
So describe the noise. What was it? A low hum? You said you could feel it.
Yeah, it was real low, that real low bass sound. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just pulsing. It was almost like you could feel it more than hear it. Right. I mean, I could hear it, but you could feel it all through your body. And I remember that as it was moving down and around the bed, I could feel it. As it was lessening in my body as it went further away. Yeah, it was. Those little details like that seem important. Those are the kind of stuff I always look for in other people's stories.
But when you both woke up or were both awake in bed in the morning, you didn't talk about it then, did you? When did you start talking about it?
It was the next day when she mentioned it when I was driving home, and I flipped out. I had to pull over, and I shook.
So what did she say?
All she said was, we were driving through this intersection, and she said, that was a weird noise in our room last night. That's all she said. And I skidded off the road into a parking lot and just shook and cried, saying they took me. And with all those memories hit me all at once. Just bam. I'm surprised I didn't wreck the car. I remember that. But there was also a friend of ours on the couch, and he had a dream that a praying mantis chased him out of the house. And it comes back to those synchronicities and coincidences that me and him had just met like a month before. He was going to be the new drummer for our band. And when I was living in Denver and all those synchronicities were going on there, this guy that I'd never met before was living in the same apartments as me and my wife at the same exact time in Denver. And we didn't know each other then. So yeah, and that goes just on and on and on.
So knowing what you know at that point, when you have this conversation with your wife and you let this out and you let her in on what you've been going through, I mean, was that it? Was it over? What happened next? Did anything happen next?
Not immediately. It started to happen again about a year or so later when I was having my third child.
That's pretty fast, though.
Yeah. But this time, it was like I said, I drank, I just refused to face it. And I think I'm one of those people they don't like to go face to face with because I freak out too much. That's why I've never seen them just a few times. Usually they're behind me. There's always somebody behind me. And yeah, the fear was just too much. I know there was a stuff. I mean, like the clicking sounds and the vibrations came back around the time of the birth of my third child, but it pretty much closed off. Almost like, I don't know. I've even had people ask me, well, you should be regressed. And I'd say, well, if they wanted me to know, I'd know. But the fact is, I was just terrified of it. I didn't want to know. I was afraid to know.
Yeah, there's schools still out on that one. I mean, or the verdict rather. Do you want to really have a regression hypnotherapy and relive that? Or,
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So yeah, when all the psychic stuff that came along with it. I mean, just all kinds of crazy. I've heard it all from other people too, and it's. But I one day, this was a couple years later, around 2000, 2001, that I just started calling them dreams, and they just slowly went away. I mean, it was like I remembered they happened, but I forgot, But even like a lot of the psychic stuff went away, all the synchronicities went away, and I just forgot. And until, a few years ago. And yeah, and that's when my search for answers started. I was a little late in the game here, I guess.
Not really. I mean, it sounds like that, you know, I don't think you should run around and brag, but yeah, when you were a youngster, it was going on, man. Don't sell yourself short. You've had quite a remarkable experience or two, and I get it. It's hard to put together. It's hard to figure out what that is, what it was, what it means, what it'll mean in the future. Do you feel it's over?
I don't feel it's over. I feel watched now more than anything. That influence is there, but now it's almost like I feel like that almost like they've been waiting for me to talk about it for a long time.
Yeah.
When I finally made the decision to talk about it, it seemed like just everything lightened. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
It does.
And the need to tell, the story is incredible. I feel like there's people out there that are going through the same thing or have been through the same thing. And sometimes it's those little tiny details that help. That's the way it is with me anyway. When I hear a little thing out of somebody else's story that matches mine, I'm like, oh yeah, it feels good to hear somebody else say it.
Do you feel that I mean, obviously you're telling this and a lot of people are going to be hearing it, but it's not the most intimate thing because you're not face to face with somebody. Do you want people? I mean, have you told other people and what was your feeling if you told them to their reaction?
Beyond a few close friends and family, I've really not told that many people.
I mean, I think it's harder to tell family, isn't it?
Yeah, there's only a couple of them that I could tell, and most of them don't want to hear it again. But yeah, I mean, what do you do with it now? I mean, when these things happen, it doesn't feel like I'm supposed to keep it to myself. Is the only way I can describe it. I don't know if this is the way a lot of people feel, but you always feel like there's something in my story that is special, that needs to be told so somebody else can hear it. And I'm not interested in trying to convince anyone because I know exactly how it sounds. If somebody else told me a lot of this stuff and I'd never experienced it, I wouldn't believe a damn word of it. But that's what makes it interesting to hear other people's stories, even whether they're believable or not. You kind of, well,
and other people have real similar stories, but there's a lot of differences too. And, maybe it's not the intention of these experiences to be different from everybody. Maybe it's your own personal background, your physiology, or your body type. Who knows why it's different, the way your brain is wired. But, your perception, I'm sure, means a lot. But obviously, somewhere along the line, they're trying to dull your senses in some way or form, and it comes out as an interpretation. I don't know. That's sort of a question.
If it's like there's something beyond the veil that wants to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And I'm not sure that it knows how to get through to us properly. And they're doing what they do, but they're trying to get through to us at the same time. But
so what do you feel's next? Do you feel like there's something coming? Do you dread the next chapter of this if it's similar, or
no? Not. I'd like to say I'd lost my fear of it completely, but yeah, I'm sure if I was face to face again, I'd freak out.
But yeah, certainly.
But it feels now. The next chapter just feels like, getting my story out for other people so it can move on. I hope it stays away from my kids, but you know how those stories go. And definitely a concern for the human race and all that. That message was quite clear.
Well, you can, I know you can lose your fear, or you think you can lose your fear and not be afraid of it happening again, but it's a disruption. I mean, obviously, if it happens again or something similar happens again, there's new information in your mind and it changes things. I mean, it's a game changer. I mean, every time, I think.
Yeah.
It should be.
It doesn't feel like anything that huge is going to happen again. Everything has been more of the high strangeness stuff. The synchronicities, the weird psychic abilities. That feels like that continues. And
you said something. You said something
Yeah.
that was really interesting. Was the fact, and I don't remember exactly how you put it, but they didn't want to deal with you because of your reaction. It was extreme. You're freaking out or whatever.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting because
when they would always stand behind me. So I couldn't see them. So I could witness more, like when they were showing me the dead elephant, things like that, if they were standing in front of me, I probably would have freaked out when I noticed anything else going on, kind of thing. Yeah. So maybe some people, they do that, and all dreams become suspect at that point.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, there's some dreams that I even have where I'm aware it's a dream, and I kind of change the flow on purpose because I don't like where it's going. But if I saw that coming, I would do a 180 somehow. I don't dig that, but thus is this part of our alien life, I guess. I mean, it's one of those things that so many people have to deal with, and luckily, not as much, but I, as well as I do, and you've heard others that deal with much more extreme circumstances on a regular basis, and it is overwhelming, and they want it to end. But then again, you hear people that love the experience and wish it would happen more, and there's people that never had any experience and want the experience. So, I don't know, man. It's
I always wonder about people that can handle seeing them face to face. It's like,
I do too.
I wish I could do that. I wish I could have. I'd probably remember so much more.
Well, and then it's that ultimate feeling of being controlled, or you're out of control, or there's a lack of control, and it's you're naked out there and alone and afraid, and it's tough. I don't know how. Obviously, you coped with many different facets, and even alcohol, and I could see that happening to other. I know where that's happened to other people, and the result is probably with some. I don't know how they turned out compared to you. How do you think you've turned out? Are you doing okay?
I'm doing great now.
Good. I was afraid to ask that question.
Yeah. There was a whole rabbit hole there with all that fear, and then drinking it away. And I'd recommend to anybody out there that's listening, don't go down that road.
So, what's next? I mean, what do you feel like you want to do with your life? I mean, are you, if people wanted to contact you on Facebook or whatever, are you willing to answer questions? Do you want to hear from people, or are you just going to hide out?
I'm just for now going to hide out.
All right.
I'm really thinking about it, and I'm kind of testing the waters with this, and we'll see how I feel about it afterwards. So I don't know if I'm the best speaker or not. So
you did all right. We did all right. So
I appreciate that.
I want to thank you first of all for reaching out, because I ask people to reach out, and some do, and I felt that you did such a great job in reaching out, and the way you did it, that instead of having your little story blurb in a show with others, I wanted to hear more about it because it just sounded super interesting. So there was that, and the way you told it, it was done very well. And then I could hear, of course, the stress and how hard it was to tell part of that story, particularly the ending. And it is hard. So thank you for that. Thank you for reaching out. And I'm sure my listeners out there would love to thank you for the time. And if I hear from them, I will pass it on to you. And I would hope that you would keep in touch so I could know how you're doing.
I will do.
All right.
And I appreciate all of it.
Absolutely. So tonight we talked to an abductee who met, we think, his hybridized son. And Pete Peters, thank you so much.
Take care, Cam.
You can find my website at www.myalienlifepodcast.com, and please subscribe to my latest downloads at iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and at podbean.com. And please follow me and like me on Facebook and Twitter. My Alien Life is written and produced for broadcast at Studio 254 in the Northern Rocky Mountains. The music you are hearing is produced and created by Eleon. You can find all Eleon's work online at Heart Dance Records.